And we are back for part two of Pack Sports Zone as we go over the NFC East. I'm your host again, Peter Plackman Clark, a.k.a. the Sports God, a.k.a. Thanks again to Pat McCaffrey for that. But at part one, we talked about all the NFC East teams, went over their pretty much every part positional zone that they have, pretty much over every single player on their roster, pretty much. But now we get to talk to somebody who's has more sports knowledge than me, and that is Marc Malusis. Let me get him on the air, and we'll be able to have interview talking with one of the best sports minds in the business. And I'd like to welcome onto the show a friend of the show, a guy that you can hear everywhere. You've heard him for 20 years, pretty much 20 years with WFAN. You've heard him. You've seen him at the racetrack, Meadowlands Racetrack, at the Hamiltonian, the Pace. Heard him on podcasts. You've heard him on Two Dudes and a Mexican with me. And now you can also see him on Pix 11 Sports. I'd like to welcome onto the show Marc Malusis. Marc, how you doing?
Peter, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good. It's been a while. Glad to hear from you.
No, it has been a while, man. How you doing? Everything good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Still talking sports, the things that we love to talk about.
That's it, man. That's it. Sports is a great distraction, especially now, no question.
Yeah, it's a crazy world, so it's always good to get the little vent away from sport, get into sports more, and just talk about it as much as you can. I could talk about it all day.
Yeah, listen, you've chosen it as a career. I've chosen it as a career. We're lucky. We're blessed. We're able to kind of, carve our way through it and have a, sports is great. I mean, it's enjoyable. It's fun. Have a blast doing it.
Yeah.
I don't take myself too seriously. You get into it. You have passionate opinions. It's fun, man. It really is. Yeah,
that's the best thing. It's always a distraction. It's something to get you hyped up. It can calm you down. It can do so many things for you. So
yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it really is, especially, if you have a team you're passionate about. Like, it's fun watching the Rangers go on their run. Yep. And unfortunately ended in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I've talked a lot about it on TV and radio. My boys all play hockey. They're all Ranger fans, and they'll all have different favorites on the team. My son Paul is a Shesterkin fan.
Yes.
Jackson loves Panarin. Gregory loves Fox. Watch that team go on that kind of run and watch it with your sons is pretty awesome. So it's fun.
It was a real fun run. I went to a couple of the times, even when they had viewing parties there. It really had the city energized and everywhere. Whether you're in Hoboken, I saw a couple games there. Everybody was going crazy for them, and I just hope they can keep it up over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's I think it's a sign of things to come. Now the question is adding the right pieces. For Drury, doesn't have a lot of cap space this offseason. Got a big decision to make about Ryan Strome. What do you do with Andrew Copp? But they've got a lot of young talent, and they need some of those younger players to continue to evolve and get better. And you saw what the potential is of Hedl is in the postseason. You need obviously more from Kako, and you need the continued development of Lafreniere. So they got a taste of it. Now it's time for some of that upper echelon younger players. Those younger players to really evolve and become stars in this league.
Yeah, that kid line was unbelievable, especially in the Carolina series. They played like the number one line in that series. They were every time they got on the ice, you can just see their energy on the ice.
Yeah, they were great. I mean, they were awesome. As frustrating as Philip Hedl is in the regular season, with his lack of consistency, get benched, getting benched by Gerard Gallant. That's how good he was in the postseason. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, let's go down to the thing that we're here for, and that's football. We got about 10, 12 weeks before the season starts, and we want to get previews on every division. I want to talk mostly about the NFC East this year right now. We'll mention a little bit about the Jets later, but we're in the New York City area. Everybody's about the Giants in the NFC East. I want to know, what do you think is the thing that they need right now? What's the biggest question about the Giants team?
I think there's a lot, Peter. I think there's a lot of questions with the team. I don't know if I can just kind of boil it down to just one. I think number one, I think you got to give Joe Shane, the new GM, And he's retooled the scouting department and some other executives within that Giant organization working under the GM. Retooled that since he took over for Dave Gettleman. He stepped into a tough situation, salary cap hell.
Yeah.
He's no longer a Giant because they couldn't afford to pay him and pay their draft choices.
Yeah.
The roster kind of rotted on the vine. So I think Shane's going to be given some time here. I think there's a sense of confidence and breath of fresh air with Shane and Daboll that hasn't been in the Giants organization for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I think Giant fans can be excited about, the potential, and it's just potential of what those two guys can do in their two respective jobs.
Yeah.
I think Daboll is an offensive innovator. You saw that. He's been Alabama offensive coordinator, helped save them win a national championship. You saw what he did, the development of Josh Allen up there in Buffalo. How he steps into a scenario where there's massive concerns and questions about just what Daniel Jones is. Number one, what is he? Number two, can he stay healthy? And he's got 1 year to prove it. And if he doesn't prove it, then the Giants will go in another direction as far as the quarterback is concerned. As can be said about Saquon Barkley. So I think they're going to look a lot better. I think Judge eventually just sucked the oxygen out of the room. And I think this team right now, the biggest question to me, I think, resides offensively at the most important position. And that would be Daniel Jones. Exactly what is he as a quarterback? I think he's physically gifted enough to play, but something doesn't connect, whether it be the pocket presence, taking care of the football, and then the lack of availability. He's not been able to stay healthy. But you watch him athletically, he's got everything you want.
Yeah.
He's got a good arm. He can throw a good deep ball. He can break containment. He can run. You've seen all that. He's got the size that you're looking for a prototypical NFL quarterback. It's got the demeanor to handle New York. It hasn't equated to really success. I think people are more excited with Daniel Jones' his initial rookie year when he's pulled for Eli Manning.
Yeah.
And then everybody buying Danny Dimes jerseys as compared to where he is right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just got to hold on to the ball. He just still continues to turn it over so much. I mean, he has cut down a little bit on that, but that's still something that's going to haunt him for the rest of his career, it seems like. I kind of want to talk about their draft picks. I mean, they seem to have a good draft. I thought they had a top 5 draft for the people this past year with Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, Wan'Dale Robinson. What do you think about their draft?
They did really well. I mean, I think, people say keep it simple, stupid sometimes, right? It's a kind of a cliche that gets thrown around. Peter, you know this better than anybody. Like, when you think about football, right? Outside of quarterback, and we get, the receivers and different aspects of the game. But, one of the biggest keys is what? Protecting yours and getting after theirs.
Yep.
And that's exactly what the Giants did with their first 2 picks. The offensive line has been an issue for 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
That's what the Giant fan has gone to bed, put their head to the pillow every single night, concerned about exactly what the offensive line is going to be. I'm not saying that Evan Neal is going to solidify every single position, but you've seen the general manager now, whether it be in free agency or whether it be the NFL draft, go out there and attack the offensive line.
Yep.
And coming from a situation in Buffalo where they did rebuild the offensive line to one of the better ones in the National Football League, he has that experience. So I think Neal is a starting right tackle. Hopefully Thomas continues to develop. I like the drafting of Kayvon Thibodeau. I think the Giants did a lot of work on him to make sure that they were comfortable. I think there were teams that were concerned about whether or not he was concerned more about his brand and being an all-pro outside edge rusher linebacker. The Giants did their homework on him. Obviously, they came away and felt like they were A-okay and comfortable with that. I thought the Giants had a really good draft. They need a lot of help. I thought Joe Shane and they had a good 3 days when it came to the draft.
I agree. I think if they hit on even if they hit out of 2 of those first 3 picks, they worked out really good. They had a couple late round flyers with some people. And it helps that they had so many picks, so hopefully it works out for them. But if you're looking for the future, all Giants fans want to know about next May around this time, drafting again. Do you think the Giants will be picking the top 5 to look for a QB?
It's a great question. I think the Giants have got a very favorable schedule. I think the head coach is going to equate to maybe a win and a half in terms of just based on his staff. I like the offensive coordinator in Kafka. I like the defensive coordinator in Marc now. I think the Giants are going to have an identity on offense and defense, something that you couldn't say the past couple of years. I think if the Giants have a top 5 pick next year, I think that I'd be disappointed. I'm not telling you the Giants are going to play relevant games in December, but I think the Giants can win more than 4 games or 5 games this season. I do, especially with a highly motivated Saquon Barkley, especially now with a motivated Daniel Jones, understanding that this year is not just proving himself to the Giants, he's proven himself to the rest of the National Football League. If you tell me Daniel Jones has a really good year, the Giants are not drafted in the top 5. If you tell me Daniel Jones is a disaster, but then, if he's really bad, I don't think the Giants are going to wait all that long to go to Tyrod Taylor, their backup quarterback, because I think they want to start winning football games.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I thought that was a great signing because I said that if Jones doesn't do well this year, you can see Tyrod in there pretty easily. We already know he's a capable, good quarterback, and he's a good fill-in towards a younger guy coming in. So I thought that was a great signing.
Well, the other thing is, Peter, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the other thing that is that it's a learning lesson as well, right? Because now you have 2 quarterbacks. They're not entirely similar.
No.
But they are similar athletically enough to where you don't have to completely change around your offense. That's why Glennon as a backup last year made little to no sense because Glennon can't do what Daniel Jones can do.
Yeah.
So if you're going to design an offense that's going to make use of what Daniel Jones is athletically, then all of a sudden he goes down to injury. You all of a sudden have to redesign your offense to suit the strengths of Mike Glennon.
Yeah.
And it was embarrassingly bad. Now you have a quarterback, even though he's not as big, and Taylor's 6'1", Jones is 6'4", he's 6'4", 6'5". He's a little bit bigger of a quarterback. They do a lot of the same things. They're very, very similar athletically. Different stages of their career, but you don't have to completely redesign your entire offense. And Jones should go down to injury once again.
Yeah, last year that was completely embarrassing when Glenn had to come in there, and you can tell the offensive coaches had no confidence in running certain plays. It really did limit the playbook for them.
No question.
Now,
Peter, no doubt about that.
And now I wanted to move on to a team that you're a little bit familiar with, the Washington Commanders. So, speaking about them, I completely agree with you.
It's just an awful. The jersey design's terrible. It's just embarrassingly bad. That's what that brain trust came up with. Was the Washington Commanders. It sounds like an XFL.
It does.
XFL. That does not sound like an NFL team.
It completely does. I'm surprised it didn't go with something like Wolverines or something at least, but it definitely sounds like XFL team.
It's so bad.
I gotta get used to saying that. We all gotta get used to saying Commanders now. It's gonna be so weird. So with them, what are your expectations for their new quarterback, Carson Wentz?
Not much. I don't know. I defended Wentz in Philadelphia after everything went down because I thought that was really an impossible spot. Going up to a stadium where you're taking over once again, coming back from a torn ACL where your backup quarterback no less wants a Super Bowl with you on the sideline, but they also have a statue out to the Philly special out in front of the link. So you see that every day that you're going to a game more often than not. That's really difficult. Wentz has gotten worse.
Yeah.
That's it. I think when you see Indianapolis, he's got a guy that very familiar with it, Frank Reich, when Reich was the quarterback coach, offensive coordinator in Philadelphia before he took the Colts job, and after McDaniels decided not to take it. And they were willing to move on from Wentz after a year.
Yeah.
I don't know what Carson Wentz is going to be this year. I do know this. If he doesn't have a great offensive line in front of him, He holds the ball way too long, takes way too many hits, doesn't take care of the football. I'm surprised at how bad he has got. I thought Washington made a terrible deal. I would not have gambled on Carson Wentz. They did. Maybe it'll surprise them.
It really made no sense to me.
Yeah, they've got really, really good talent. I think Del Rio, put aside his comments about January 6th. But if you look at Jack Del Rio as a defensive coordinator, I think Del Rio's terrible. Yeah. I mean, I do. I think he does very little with a lot. And I think there was a lot of talent on that defense last year, and the Washington defense wasn't particularly good. I don't know how good they're going to necessarily be this year. They've got one first-round pick, high-level pick after another along that defensive line. You look at the linebacker core as well.
Yeah, I thought they should have been a top-5 defense last year with the stack. Their front seven is great if you look at it on paper.
Oh my God, they've got so many guys that can play. It's like an embarrassment of riches when you look at it. Mean and all these guys swag. Yeah. And the other thing is, I mean, Chase Young has not exactly been the player everyone thought he was going to be coming out of Ohio State either. I mean, he's good. He is not. I mean, if you want to look at Micah Parsons in Dallas and look at what Chase Young is with Washington. I mean, Micah Parsons is basically the modern day. He's not LT, but he's the modern day Lawrence Taylor. Yeah. He can line up anywhere, and he is a game record. That is not what Chase Young is, and that's what everyone thought he was going to be coming out of Ohio State.
Yeah, they thought he was going to be another Bosa. That's pretty much what they thought. They thought he was going to be Bosa, and I thought so too, because he had the athletic measurables. He produced it on the field at Ohio State, so you thought it was going to translate to an NFL. And I know he's dealt with some injuries, especially last year, but he just hasn't hit that top end that we thought he was going to do.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't. And so, you asked me about what they're going to be. If Wentz is okay, but they've got a lot of talent. They get McLaurin signed to that 3-year, $71 million deal. Antonio Gibson can run the football. Offensive line is okay. I like their skill positions. I don't know if I love their first-round draft choice this past year, even though I liked them coming out of Penn State. I don't know if I would have drafted them when Washington did. Yeah. I've got to see it in order to believe it with Washington a little bit. Mm-hmm. And right now, I don't know if I necessarily believe that Carson Wentz is going to find it once again in Washington.
Gotcha. And just moving on to just quickly go through the rest of the NFC East. What's your thoughts on Jalen Hurts and them acquiring A.J. Brown?
I love Brown. I mean, he's great. Yeah. I mean, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are going to be fantastic. I love Sanders running the football down in Philadelphia as well. Yep. I give the Eagles a lot of credit for they're really, really creative. They go for high-level talent. They add them to it. So I'm not saying everything's a hit. It's not, but I'm not a Jalen Hurts believer. Yeah. I know he was terrible in the Buccaneer playoff game, and I know he had a hip injury. Yeah. I just don't think he is. I heard Phil Simms say this. Was it last year? I think it was. Looking at Jalen Hurts. Listen, I think you have to couch everything you say about Hurts with this. He's an unbelievable human being. Yes. Like Jalen Hurts, from his days at Alabama and how he handled the benching there, to Oklahoma, to Philadelphia. I think when he took over for Wentz in Philly, I think it was kind of a cleansing down in Philadelphia. And what I mean by that is I think Wentz rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Jalen Hurts is a tremendous leader and is as good of a human being as you'll meet. Yes. With that, I just don't know if he's not consistently accurate enough for me to be a winning quarterback in the NFL. That's the problem I have with Jalen Hurts. I think there's things to like. Everyone who owns a fantasy or hops on a fantasy football team loves Jalen Hurts because he's a top 5 quarterback every single year. But he puts up unbelievable stats running and throwing. But when he needs to make the big time throw, is Jalen Hurts going to be able to make it now? when you have two receivers of the caliber of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown down in Philadelphia, I mean, they can make your job a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
They really can. But that's the big concern I have about Hurts, and I think Philadelphia is going to give him one more crack. There's nothing. I mean, you've got Dallas Goedert, you've got Brown, you've got Devontae Smith, you've got Jalen Reagor, who's been more of a disappointment, but still, he's the deep threat down in Philadelphia. Sanders running the football. Can catch out of the backfield as well.
Yeah.
There is enough around Jalen Hurts for him to answer all the questions or concerns about him in a positive way. Now, the thing is, will he do it? I'm not so sure he will. And I think that's why Philadelphia now, they have 2 first-round picks next year, right, in the NFL draft, to give them options potentially in what should be a very, very quarterback-rich draft come next spring.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that he's in a similar situation that a lot of the QBs in the NFC East are. You look at with Wentz, and you see he has McLaurin there, and you look at Daniel Jones, and he has Galladay and Tony and Shepard and Wan'Dale Robinson, and you look at Jalen Hurts with those wide receivers you just stated, and we're talking about Cowboys. You got Dak with still CeeDee Lamb there. That team is stacked with highly skilled offensive weapons, and it's just on the quarterback to hit the right thing. And moving on to that, with the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb is now going to be the number 1 guy with Amari Cooper gone. They lost Cedric Wilson in the offseason. How do you think that? Do you think they're going to be still rolling on offense, or do you think they're going to take a step back?
Yeah, I listen, Lamb's a number 1 wideout, right?
Yeah.
I think he's going to prove to be better than Amari Cooper. He's great.
Yeah.
He's great at Oklahoma. He's going to be a big-time playmaker. Who doesn't love watching CeeDee Lamb catch the ball in the open field and making guys look silly?
Yeah.
He's unbelievable. I think you'd have to think that they're probably going to take a little bit of a step back offensively, and I think Dak at times can be a little bit of an enigma, and what I mean by that is that he's going to put up some gaudy stats. There's going to be some things, but then there are going to be games where he does not nearly look as good as you need him to look throwing the football. Now, they're not going anywhere. He's their quarterback. But I would have to think that he probably, or the Cowboys offense on the whole, takes a step back. Plus, I'm not a huge McCarthy guy.
No.
I mean, Bloom has been off that rose for a while after he got let go by the Packers.
Yeah, completely agree. I've never been high on McCarthy. You have Aaron Rodgers for all those years, and you can only get 1 Super Bowl. It's kind of showing you something right there. But when it's all said and done, who do you think is going to be the best team in the NFC East, and who's going to be the team that's probably the worst?
I think right now, I think the odds are the Giants are going to be the worst team in the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's the way to look at it.
Yeah.
Who's the best team? I think it comes down to you tell me, okay, can Carson Wentz bounce back in a big-time way? Washington's got a shot to be the best team. I think the safest bet is the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Because you know what Prescott is. And if you believe, and we all know, the quarterback's the most important position in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You have an NFC East where you have Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, and Daniel Jones. How do the Cowboys not win that division?
Yeah. It's just the Eagles.
I mean, how do the Cowboys, as many concerns as you might have over Dak Prescott, I mean, he is so far better than everybody else in that division. The back spot's not even close.
Easily. I just think when it comes down to the getting into the playoffs and being the late in the season, having to win those clutch games, I kind of have more confidence in the Eagles than I do in the Cowboys.
I can see that. I mean, I can understand. I think there's an argument to be made about Philadelphia. I think you gotta like what Philadelphia is offensively. I think and here's the one thing about the Eagles: they know what they are, and they know what they need to be. Right? They can get after the quarterback. Offensive line has been addressed. Now the big thing is Jalen Hurts. If you tell me, Peter, if you're telling me Jalen Hurts is a really consistent year throwing the football, I think the Eagles can easily win the division.
Yeah.
Smith is going to be an unbelievable receiver.
Unbelievable.
He's so silky smooth in his routes. He always is able to create separation. Everybody gets caught up in that, he's a little slight of frame and that can crippling muscle after another. Who the hell cares?
Yeah, he blows
all
by
the
the
guy does
defense.
is produce.
Yeah.
All he does is produce, and he's this glider.
Yeah.
He runs by guys, and he looks like he's just gliding past them. He's unbelievable to watch. So I can understand where you make the argument about Philadelphia. I think they're the top two teams in the division. I think Washington's third. I think the Giants are fourth.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely about Devontae Smith. I was very high on him coming out of college, and it's the same reason why I love Jameson Williams coming out this year, because before the injury, I mean, he was always behind the defense. No matter what year it was he was in college. Even before he transferred, he was the same thing. He always found a way behind SEC defenses, which are supposed to have the best athletes. So Jameson Williams was by far my number one wide receiver. Obviously, the torn ACL brought him down, but I see a lot of him, Devontae Smith, Tyreek Hill in the same ilk of those wide receivers that are always behind the defense.
Yeah, I don't disagree. They all do it a little bit differently, but those guys are, and they're able to read defenses, able to create separation easily, and do it quite easily as well. So I don't disagree. And I agree with you about Jameson Williams. I felt so bad for him when he tore his ACL. Hopefully, and I think he is. I think if he was healthy, he would have been the number one receiver off the board.
Gotcha. Before we get you out of here, I want to get two quick questions on the Jets. I feel that talk about people that have surrounded people with talent, surrounding a quarterback with talent. Zach Wilson has everything at his dispense right now. They brought in wide receivers, they brought in tight ends, they drafted a running back, they helped out the offensive line. Is everything on Zach Wilson now?
Yeah, no excuses. I mean, Peter, you nailed it. I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that. They've addressed the offensive line. I'm not telling you it's the Hogs from the '80s or Eric Williams, Larry Brown, Dallas Cowboys offensive line, but the offensive line is not going to be an issue.
Yeah.
You've got a two-headed monster at running back in Carter and Breece Hall.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it. They added two receivers, C.J. Uzomah from Cincinnati, two tight ends in Uzomah and Conklin during the course of the free agency. Even drafted one in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
The receivers, you've got every single layer and level here for Zach Wilson. It's go time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no excuse. Like if Zach Wilson does not play well this year, it's on Zach Wilson.
Yes.
Then it's a case of that the Jets drafted wrong, taking him second overall. Mm-hmm. This is not about the adjustment to the NFL should be in the rear view mirror. They used Patrick Mahomes light coming out of BYU. Mm-hmm. So now he's got everything at his disposal. If he doesn't have a big time year, then it's really coming out of this year. It's going to be the Jets might need or are going to need their franchise quarterback because Wilson's not in.
And with that, with everything being on Wilson, and I wasn't personally high on Wilson coming out, but I saw, obviously, so you can see what the Jets saw in his talent. But certain places of what ESPN, however they do their rankings, say the Jets are going to be the number one pick next year. I don't understand that because I think the Jets are going to win a good amount of games. But what do you think the Jets will be this year? Do you think they're going to be a bad team still, or do you believe in Wilson? Do you think they'll be a good team?
I don't think the Jets are going to have the number one. I think if the Jets have the number one overall pick next year, then I think it's just not only. I mean, unless Wilson goes down to injury, but then you're looking at whether or not Robert Saleh is the coach. The Jets are going to have. Let's not forget about they're going to have Carl Lawson coming back, who didn't play it down in the regular season last year after tearing his Achilles. I think Joe Douglas said it right about a month and a half ago. We expect to play meaningful games in December.
Yes.
I think that has to be the expectation here for the Jets. You've dealt with the Gase years. You're now into year number 2 with Saleh. You've got your quarterback. You've got your receivers. You got your tight end. You got your offensive line. You got your running backs. You have an offensive coordinator that you hope can make great use out of all of them. The defense should be a lot better. Saleh was praised for being a great defensive mind coming over from the 49ers. Mm-hmm. They can't have the number 1 overall pick next spring. If they do, then it really came off the tracks. I mean, it really did. The train came off the tracks. I think they'll be playing relevant games in December. I don't think they'll be a playoff team, but I don't think the Jets are going to be out of it come Halloween.
I say this, if the Jets were in the NFC, I think they would definitely be a contender to make the playoffs. It's just the AFC is just ridiculous between all those teams out west, and then you're talking about the Bills and the Patriots in your own division, and you're talking about the Colts and Titans, and then you're not even talking about Baltimore bouncing back to go with Cincinnati. It's like a demolition course out there in the AFC.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna make it to the playoffs. But you're right, and you look at Baltimore. I mean, they've got their own issues with Lamar Jackson and a Raven team that was just besieged by injuries last year. I mean, every single week they had a key player that was going down to injury. So I agree with you. I think that's a good call about Baltimore. I'm a little concerned about Tennessee without A.J. Brown. I'm not a Tannehill guy. I mean, he was a disaster last year. Yeah. I think that he had a hard time getting over that playoff performance and that loss against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I look at it. I think the AFC East is going to be, difficult, especially with Buffalo being there. Yeah. And you always have Belichick and the Patriots. But now it's a matter of the Jets have built, they've got enough talent here to do something and to give you the expectation that 2023 is going to be a big-time year.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, Marc, thank you again for coming on the show, giving us some of your sports wisdom. It's always fun talking to you. Anything you want to plug out here?
No, I'm on Pix 11 Sunday through Thursday. I appreciate your support as always, Peter. I know you do a great job. You're fantastic, man. You do great work, and you know your sports better than anybody. So I appreciate you having me on, man. It's always good catching up with you and chatting with good people.
Oh, thank you, Marc. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.
All right, you got it, Peter.
And I want to once again thank Marc for coming on the air, having a great conversation with him. Always good to talk to him, talk a lot of New York sports, but not just New York sports, talk about all sports. He's a big-time sports fan for everything, so it's always good with Marc. With that said, that is the end of part 2 of the NFC East review on Pack Sports Zone. Like I said, over the next 7 weeks, we're going to be going over every single division, going over every single team, which will lead into fantasy rankings because all your drafts will be coming up in late August. And then by that time, I'll be giving you who I think will be going into the Super Bowl. And then the week after that, we'll do week 1 predictions. So we got everything lined up for you. And during those shows, obviously, if anything happens in the other sports, we'll be bringing that up. Just like earlier today, Rudy Gobert gets traded from the Utah Jazz while pretty much going over everything here. So Rudy Gobert is now going to the Minnesota Timberwolves and what essentially is for 5 first-round picks, 4 future picks, 3 of them unprotected. I think 2029 is protected, and then their first-round pick this year, a 7-foot kid. It's just a lot to give up for Rudy Gobert, who typically is a one-sided player. He plays great defense, one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the league, but he's limited on offense. So it's a lot to give up that much, but he will fit very good with Karl Anthony Towns, who can play some defense, but he's mostly an offensive big man. Those two next to each other should be really fun to watch in Minnesota, to go with Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell. So it looks like it's times are turning around in Minnesota, definitely sacrificing the future. And as for Utah, it looks like Utah is going the Portland route, as they can go 2 routes. They can go towards the let me get rid of Donovan Mitchell, and now we're going to completely start over. We're going to tank to try to get the number 1 pick. I haven't done research on the NBA draft next year, but I heard there is a super pick that would be by far better than anybody this year and probably better for the last 5 years. So next year is the pick that you want to be number 1. So you can expect a couple teams to start tanking in the middle of the NBA season. But you can go that route, or you can go with, listen, you have Donovan Mitchell. You have a top 10, top 15 player in the league right now. We're just going to keep him and surround him with pieces. And it looks, from what I'm hearing, is that's what they're going to do. They're going to keep hold on to Donovan Mitchell and just see what happens around him. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Utah Jazz do, as it's the same thing that the Portland Trailblazers did last year with Dame Lillard. They pretty much traded off everybody off the roster and kept Dame. Dame was hurt, and then you work around Dame, and they signed their center back, Nursef, back for a $70 million, a 4-year deal today. I don't know if I agree with that, if I'm going to surround him with players to complement him, but point is that's the plan that Utah seems to be going in. So with that said, we'll catch you next week on Pack Sports Zone. We'll talk about what happened in Money in the Bank. We'll talk about what happened on wrestling. We'll talk about if anything happened in any sports this week. Just the usual stuff. I'm your host, Peter Pac-Man Clark, and I'll catch you next week. Peace out, guys.